with this story. A big investigation came out where the police guards are raping young boys who are supposed to be separate from grown men and turning the boys over to adult men in this facility that's supposed to be protecting them. There's a big investigation going on right now. So the people who are supposed to be protecting us in these facilities a lot of times abusing us. Verbally and physically abusing Michael Myers in this place. Got him on heavy psychotropic medication, which we're going to talk about. And then the man who you see in the movie who was following him around all the time, Dr. Loomis, he was supposed to be giving him therapy. After about 10 years, he said, "There's nothing else I can do for you." And he walked out on him. Don't that sound familiar? People giving up on our children. So Michael, and on top of that, his mother committed suicide. Don't that sound familiar? Suicide rate in the black community is going through the roof. So with all that going on, he snapped. That's why he became the maniacal killer that you see once they came out with the remake and talked about his circumstances. But originally, there was nothing wrong with this boy. Just like there's nothing wrong with our children. The only thing wrong with our children is their circumstances. But you have to believe that. If you believe it's something wrong with them from the gate, and then it's some of us actually turning out like this. Don't we have some killers in our neighborhood? Killed that girl and threw her in the back of a yard and her mom had to see that? I'm talking about right here in Durham. Some of our boys and some of our adults are out of control. They're not too far off from that. That's why I showed you this. Do y'all see the similarity now? I know y'all was looking at me first and said, he's comparing our children to this nut? But really, if you look at his circumstances, what's the difference? No father, home circumstances, alcohol, drug abuse, domestic violence. Look at him choking her. I had to almost stop a Negro the other day in my neighborhood. He drives past me as I'm taking my 5-mile walk, pulls over. Once I get up on the car, he straddled on top of this sister, beating her down. This is just the other day. I mean, beating her like a rag doll. I said, "Excuse me, sir." "Man, nigga, get the F away from my car." So what's happened to him, whoever he was? Luckily, he drove off. But what's happened to us? It's our circumstances. Nothing wrong with us. Y'all all right?
Yes, sir.
Now, the origin of Satan's plan to medicate black people. Remember I said in the beginning how this goes way back? It goes way back. Here's a signer of the Declaration of Independence. Look what he said. Look who he was. And he is at the forefront of this. This is Benjamin Rush. Was a physician, a writer, educator. I don't know how he got that last name. He was also one of America's founding fathers who signed the Declaration of Independence. He's also a founding father of black inferiority in the notion that blacks suffer from mental illnesses. Now we're bringing it home, and I'm going to bring it right home to where we are about this thing of us being crazy and coming up with all these fictitious diseases that don't exist, just like this one he made up. He said blacks had a medical condition because of their black skin called nigritude. The only way to cure it was for them to become white. This is what he said. I didn't make this up. Go look it up. That's where people get the term, "You're really acting like a Negro." They get it from him because he said we had nigritude because of your black skin, and the only way to cure it was for you to become white. And he's a signer of the Declaration of Independence. Benjamin Rush, right out of Philadelphia. Now, this is the root in the supposed origin of us, something being wrong with us. He said you had nigritude. And if you go into general psychology books, that is still there. They've never gotten rid of that term. Y'all follow me?
Yes, sir.
It's many others. I could be here all day. He's one of the worst ones. In the last couple of years, the conscious community has been looking at this documentary called Goodbye Uncle Tom, which is the real deal of what happened on the slave plantation. It's the real deal. And when you get the DVD, which I have, on the front it says, "Goodbye, Uncle Tom makes Roots look like an episode of the Jeffersons." And it does. It makes it look like a joke. Well, Dr. Samuel Cartwright was in that movie. Look at him. In 1848, he became world renowned by publishing a plethora of articles, once again, about mental illnesses of blacks. In his book that you can still get today, you can go on Amazon and still get this book. It's called The Diseases and Physical Peculiarities of the Negro Race. He used biblical references, oh really, to try to prove black inferiority. He said it was impossible for blacks to survive without white supervision. In 1851, he even diagnosed an imaginary black disease called drapetomania, which he claims it caused laziness and shiftlessness in the Negro. He said blacks had illnesses that caused them to run from their master and break their master's property. The best way to cure the illness was to beat the devil out of them. So he said you had a mental illness called drapetomania.
Who is this again? What's his name again?
Dr. Samuel Cartwright, right there at the top. And he is in Goodbye, Uncle Tom. So he would go from plantation to plantation, diagnosing African slaves, saying, yeah, it's something wrong with him. It's something wrong with her. What was the cause? Oh, they want their freedom. No mention of us being kidnapped out of Africa, raped, slaughtered, and murdered, being held against your will. He said if you wanted your freedom, which is an innate quality in any human being, for you to want your freedom, you put a bees in a jar or put a bird in a cage. The first thing they doing, they breaking for the door. But with us, according to him, you had a disease called drapetomania. And once again, if you go to the general psychiatry, this is called the DSM, the Bible of Mental Disorders. This mental disorder, drapetomania, is still in there. They haven't removed it. Here's another one. In 1854, Dr. Joshua Knott, he came out with a book that you can still get called Types of Mankind. It claimed that blacks had physical and mental differences. Again, see how I said this ain't just happened in the last 25 years? From whites, that we were inferior. One of the physical differences were the blacks' knee joints and their long heels proved, according to Dr. Knott, that blacks were hypersexual and created to be submissive knee benders to whites. He said because your knees and your heels were different and longer, it meant they were longer because you were supposed to bow down physically and mentally to white people. He's also one of the first ones to come out with the idea that because of the difference of our skulls, it meant that we were inferior to white people. Dr. Joshua Knott. I could be here 2 more hours just talking about different doctors trying to prove mental illnesses among blacks and black inferiority. I could be here 2 more hours easy. Y'all see the groundwork?
Yes, sir.
Now, mental hospitals were started on the backs of black people, for the most part. A history that most people, once again, don't know. What you're looking at is Central Hospital in Virginia. Where were the first supposed slaves that brought to America brought? In 1611? Jamestown, Virginia. That's what they said. In 1611, formerly known as the Central Lunatic Asylum. Here, it's a mental hospital. It's the first institution in America for colored persons of unsound mind. They didn't call them crazy back then. They called them people of unsound mind. This is the first institution built for mentally insane people, right in Virginia. By 1848, the state started admitting African slaves. Here, these were their first customers. From plantations for imaginary mental illnesses, being criminal and trying to run. Slave masters would pay the state to house African slaves. These slaves were subjected to forced sterilization, sexual abuse, inhumane living conditions. No mention of the horrors of slavery and present-day oppression and abuse were attributed to these supposed mental illnesses. Blacks with mental illnesses were even separated from whites with mental illnesses because it was said that blacks would undermine or impede the mental progress of whites. Soon, mental institutions were erected all over the country, making huge profit off of black mental health. This is the first institution for coloreds of unsound mind. So like I've explained before, say you had Uncle Leroy who was in this institution. You go there to see him.